and welcome everybody. This is the ScreenTones live holiday edition. We are going to be drawing scunches all night, apparently. That is just going to be how it is today. So, welcome and thank you for joining us on this Saturday. I am Rennie. I use she/they pronouns, and I make the webcomic Cape Blast.
Oh, I guess we should go down the line of
Yeah.
people. Well, I'm gonna go down by the line that I see. So, oh, it's me. Okay.
No. Waiting for you, Crispy.
My name is Crispy. I use she/they pronouns, and I create, or I guess I co-create the webcomic Ghost Junk Sickness.
And I'm Miranda, and I use she, her pronouns, and I create the comic Into the Swell.
I'm Claire. I use she, her pronouns. I make the webcomic Phantomarine.
I'm Finn. I use they, them pronouns, and I create the webcomic Heirs of the Veil.
I'm Ray. I use they, them pronouns, and I create the webcomic Overlord of Ravenfell and a new webcomic called On Empyrean High.
Rennie?
It's you. I already went.
Oh, okay. Sorry. You appear to be above me in the order. I'm Verathane. I use she/they pronouns, and I make the webcomics Chiralt and Witchwood.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Excellent. I also draw terrible Grinches.
Why are you calling them terrible? These are
Grinches.
excellent.
They're all wonderful.
These are all beautiful gunches.
I think so too. Oh, I love that some people are still gunching it up. Just wanted to get a last few gunch lines going before we clear.
Lines.
It's like the new Pringling. It's to gunch.
Pringling?
I think the Pringling on this gunch is really, really solid.
Yeah, I think I'm done
Oh,
Pringling though, so let me know when we want to.
All right. Let me
All right, I'm
let
gonna
me take a
clear
screenshot
that.
of this for posterity.
Very important.
Oh no.
Oh my god. So I guess we should start talking about, webcomics and comics and all that gorgeousness stuff. And I guess what I wanted to start with is why webcomics? Why did we all get into the webcomic world, or I guess how, and what it kind of means to all of us here. Miranda, I'm gonna go for you first. I'm so sorry.
No
Good for
pressure. Okay. Well, I got into webcomics because I wanted to learn how to draw, but coming up with illustrations is really hard for me. And when you decide to learn how to draw, there's a whole lot that you got to learn, and where do you start? So I have a lot of stories in my head, and I had recently discovered webcomics. I was like, that seems a great way to get the stories out of my head and also give me specific things that I need to draw. And so I started there, drawing my characters and all the stuff that you need for a webcomic, and I found that you have to draw everything when you make a webcomic. So it's a great way to learn how to draw everything and anything. So
Golly. Is it ever? You're just like, okay, so the next scene's gonna have a car. Damn it.
yep, now I gotta learn how to draw a car.
Why did I do this to myself?
Oh my god.
Skull in my
It's
script.
fun.
Yeah.
It is fun.
Oh, that's definitely a big mood because, I know I at least started my current webcomic because the only way to get better at comics is making comics. So it's like, all right, let's just go in, do it live, learn, because I just wanted to learn how to make the dang thing. So just jumped right into webcomics, and webcomics is so easy to go in and learn and go at your own pace too, because you're not beholden to anyone but yourself. So you can really set the bar wherever you want or wherever you need it to be. So that's I think one of the reasons that I was drawn personally to webcomics is just there's no wrong way to do a webcomic. So do it your own way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's basically like, I mean, for me in webcomics, I have drawn comics since I was a wee one. And, you know, just reading manga or I guess Calvin and Hobbes from my brother's stash. And I was just like, this is easier for me to convey a story with, you know, illustrations accompanying it and not having to rely on, you know, just words and stuff like that. Like, I'm not the best with like prose at all. And I found that, you know, combining the two really helped the strengths that I had to kind of teeter them. So I definitely learned like faster to become better at the art that was required to carry that narrative, as well as you know, the prose that kind of come along with it, and writing dialogue and, you know, blah 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 blah. And I guess over the years, as I was continuing to do my million different versions of my comic that Thane unfortunately has read, like
Unfortunately or fortunately?
I loved
very
every second.
unfortunate. I cringed so but doing so, like, you know, having these comics and these trials and errors, and like the pages that I've done before are like absolute like behemoths and mountains of pages and comics and stuff like that, you know, you just eventually discard. Because the other thing that's really, really cool about, I guess, comics in general when you're doing it by yourself, is that it's also this learning experience for the self, and you grow along with it. So, you know, I was doing that, and eventually I was just like, well, I'm really proud of this. How do I get people to read it? And it's not like, oh, I'm just gonna get this published, was not in my small teenage brain at the time. And, you know, the most accessible and, like, you know, immediate place to post it was the internet. So DeviantArt was where I started posting.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, and gaining a little bit of traction there, and just, you know, having experience with the community that you're a part of, and then, you know, eventually moved from that. But yeah, it's always been in my brain to make comics, just because it's just the easiest way for me to kind of express myself with stories. But yeah, comics. That's me.
Thomas.
Clam.
Oh, Clam is an animator and didn't want to animate, so she made a webcomic. It's basically the simplest thing. Like, I have not made any webcomics in the past, but I just was like, I'm just kind of bored sitting here, and I've got stories in my head, and I'd love a long-term project, but I just don't. I'm not interested in doing like a huge animated pilot for something, or, you know, working years on something like that in particular. So I'm just like, I want to do something smaller, something a bit more reasonable, and lo and behold, webcomics are a thing for that. So that's how I fell into it. I really didn't plan on any other thing other than just like, how do I get this out in the easiest way possible?
Funny, compared to animation, they are significantly faster to get the story in there. You
Like,
don't
some
need a
people
team of
would
100 people.
Exactly. Like, you still think like, oh, maybe it's going to be incredibly, you know, time consuming. And yes, it is. But compared to animation, like, oh my goodness, like, it is. I'm a 3D animator. So at the very least, my job is a tiny bit easier because, you know, we can have the computer interpolate certain frames and things like that. But oh my gosh, like, the rest of it, no, you absolutely must draw every little thing. And I'm just like, I want to draw crowds for this story. I can't do that for animation.
But like, that's really cool, because like the way that you have control of the medium, like animation, you do know the storyboarding aspect, and a lot of that does cascade into comics too. Like, it's not
That's true.
like, it's not 100% comparable, because, you know, there's obviously the difference. But it's really cool that they can lend like a hand to each other as a skill.
And storyboarding itself like is its own skill. Like I've actually never storyboarded anything in particular. Like they definitely cross over, but I think, you know, you're with a storyboard, you're going from, you know, camera angle to camera angle. You're not really thinking about, you know, how they're arranged on a page or anything like that. So it's not an exact one-to-one sort of thing, but I think looking at storyboards, because I have to reference storyboards as I'm animating, and seeing how people set up their shots and different poses that they do or little shorthand things, like it's actually really, really good for learning. So yeah, everything kind of bleeds into each other that way. It's cool.
It's really fun when you can take things from different mediums or things like that and plop it into your own thing.
So yeah, I feel like a lot of people had, you know, stories where they're like, I was reading this webcomic and I really wanted to do a webcomic like that. And I'm just like, I just wanted to avoid pain.
Yeah. I want a different kind of pain.
Replace pain with pain.
Exactly.
Pongles, I get you. Pain, bread.
Yeah.
Hey, Finn.
How about you?
Yeah. Tell us about Finn.
Webcomics were in Germany at the time pretty approachable because if you were into like manga or anime, you would go to a specific site called Animex. And Animex had like a doujinshi corner. That means it basically encouraged people to share fan comics or their own stuff. So I think every German artist I know that like kind of went into the manga direction started out there. So it was basically gifted to us from the beginning.
Oh, that's
Nice.
Yeah, to basically do webcomics. For a while, I dabbled in print comics. I had a pretty bad experience with an Austrian indie publisher called Experience. So I guess the name.
The irony.
Yeah. And because I kind of wanted to like be able to just do my own stuff and be not like in any way constricted by a publisher, I went back into webcomics.
Yeah. Like, that's like a really, really good point, though, is that being constricted by a publisher or restricted by a publisher, it really means that you do have like full control over the projects that you make with webcomics, and it's very freeing with that.
Yeah. Nobody to tell you what to do.
I can have all the elves in my comic.
With pointy
So
ears and
many
silver hair.
Everyone's gay.
You can't stop us.
Gay elves? It's more likely than you think.
No one to tell you, sorry, gay elves just aren't selling right now. I'm sorry. Like,
Well, hey,
change
that
up your
person
pitch.
is lying. Gay elves always sell.
this is true. They don't know the market.
Yeah. You should get a new publisher if they're telling you that.
But the elves don't
Seriously.
sell.
I think a lot about that, though, with the scene, particularly with the fact that it's just like, I feel like webcomics have had over the last 5 years this like exponential growth and like I guess some kind of impression, a huge impression to kind of change what is being published like in the indie scene as far as that goes. And I think that the doors have really, really opened for the content that we see. Specifically, I'm going to say in the North American sphere, because I know that they're all different, right? Like, what we publish here is going to be different from what we publish over there, XYZ, kind of thing. But the really, really cool thing about webcomics is that you always are connected and linked, kind of, almost no matter where you go to click and read. you can find content from all over the place. And I think that's just really, really special to kind of, you know, be a part of as far as webcomics are concerned.
Hell yeah.
I'm making boops.
Making boobs.
I think Ray is up next.
Yeah, Ray.
Well, I mean, I'm a webcomic old, so I've done webcomics since Comic Genesis. But I viewed it as kind of like just a way to get started, you know, improve my craft by actually doing. And doing like a fun little comic while I'm doing it. And like now it's kind of like also like, oh hey, you know, I don't know if a publisher will accept something like this, because definitely when I started publishing my webcomics, like the only one out there that was taking something that was like manga was Tokyo Pop, and we all know how that turned out.
It made such an impression on my life, though.
Right?
Well, it's like it showed that it could be marketable in like the publishing sphere, so I do feel like it had a significant effect on like pretty much non-superhero comics in the US.
Yeah,
But
you're right.
what a way to go. I knew a few of the people that had their comic published like by Tokyo Pop, and they don't like talking about it.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Like, the thing, though, is that, like, you know, it was such an interesting part, like, I think of a lot of people's lives, because Tokyo Pop was there during, like, the great manga bubble that kind of, like, grew in, I know, specifically North America, and it definitely made its reaches everywhere else. And I think it's still alive, right? Like, they just do weird...
It's like a zombie. They do, like, a handful of,
Do like Disney comics or something?
Yeah, they do Disney comics. They do like a handful of other comics like Hitalia, but overall, from the sounds of it, they burned a lot of bridges with their with like Japanese manga publishers.
Yeah, so essentially, like, the big part of them is that they can get, like, the licenses for really cheap to kind of translate and then put out, like, a heck ton in North America. So we got access to all of these comics, more popular ones, like, you know, God, just, like, all of them.
Didn't they do Full Metal Alchemist? Like the first run? I feel like that was Tokyo Pop.
Oh, it is.
Boom.
But I could be wrong. But they were also the first one to release unflipped manga, which saved a lot of like prices and stuff. And like pretty much made it to where they were $10 instead of the $17 that the flipped manga was for. So it made it cheaper and more accessible.
Yeah.
But as far as bringing English manga to people, like, they did do that, but they also burned a lot of people in the process.
Yeah, I think it was just, like, something that kind of grew too big. They didn't know how to handle it. And it was still technically one of the first of its own to reach as far as it did. I know it specifically did the vast majority, if not all, the clamp works that came over to North America during that time, and so on and so forth. So, like, it still made a giant impression, because, like, that's when I got my hands on a lot of things that influenced me as an artist, and I think, like, a lot of other people. And then on top of that, the How to Draw manga books were coming out, so it was just like, oh my god, like, what a time to be alive. And I remember specifically on DeviantArt, because there were people who were on DeviantArt who were actually publishing their comics through Tokyo Pop. And at the time, didn't realize how crafty and shady the business were, because these people were also really young. And I guess, like, honestly, me at that age, if I was, like, 16 and someone was like, by the by, do you want your crappy little anime comic in Tokyo Pop? I'd be like, heck yes, sign me up. but not understanding like the cruddy contracts that went in
Yeah.
with it, and the obvious backlash that you're going to get now. Like, we are much more wiser and like
yeah.
very fast at sharing that information to people who might find out that they would be scammed. But that was like the biggest pitfall, was that
a lot
the
of
rights being held.
yeah, I mean, I would say that being published even now is very much a thing for like people that go all starry-eyed. They want to they pretty much don't necessarily consider the consequences of that. But overall, I do think that like webcomics are a really good way for people that might find it difficult to get published to otherwise go. And I definitely feel that's why there's also so many minorities that decide to go that route than go with the like limited amount of publishers that clearly they have their own brand to consider.
Yeah. It was definitely interesting kind of seeing that kind of go, and I would be like wrong to say that didn't influence me as an artist to want that direction of what like Tokyo Pop made with that impression on me as a young being, to create webcomics. And I think it was like finding out about the drama that kind of ensued with people, not getting rights to their freaking work, and then Tokyo Pop like exploding on itself, essentially. That did push a lot of people to be like, okay, I want to be independent from these things. Because I remember during that kind of quote unquote crash, it was just like, own your work, own the rights, own the domain, own the place that you publish your work, is the best defense. And it is. It 100% is.
Even still
and
today.
Like, it's not 100% accessible is the thing, because, like, it is still pricey to have a domain or like own it. It's pricey to upkeep it. It's pricey to, either learn code or pay for someone to code the site for you. 100%. All those things. But definitely at the end of the day, I think about what has happened to people who've lost their work because of XYZ, because of whatever this company who was hosting it had, or in a contract had power to do so. And, again, I think webcomics is definitely that out for that kind of little pitfall you might fall into.
Yeah, I think, especially with the Tokyo Pop thing, a thing that's pretty interesting is that Tokyo Pop never really had like this downfall in Germany. It really quickly became like one of the biggest manga publisher, and also one of those that published basically the most German artists. But I also know of artists who basically then couldn't produce merch for their own series and stuff because Tokyo Pop had the rights. But I know that the German Tokyo Pop contracts had like they had to put a clause in that after like 2 years of going out of print, the artist gets the rights back and stuff. And I guess most people I know had a pretty okay experience with Tokyo Pop here in general. But I also think that the publishing industry here is very different. Because Tokyo Pop Germany was, created, was brought up by someone who was the head of another publishing house at the time. And then he stopped that, and now he, like, founded his own publishing house after leaving Tokyo Pop.
Oh, yeah, interesting.
I think one of the main differences between the US and the US and the European branches of Tokyo Pop is I'm pretty sure the EU has like built-in moral rights for like art and stuff like that, where the US doesn't. And Tokyo Pop did kind of have something about the moral rights in the U.S. contract,
Oh,
I believe.
interesting.
Mhm.
Very interesting.
So they didn't necessarily even have to credit you if they didn't feel like it.
Yummy.
Gosh.
That's yummy.
Yeah.
Oh,
I am so glad for webcomics.
big move.
Mood. God.
Rennie,
Wait.
how about you?
Yeah, Rennie.
Yeah, no, I definitely got into webcomics in a big way back in the ye old days of when DeviantArt was at its peak.
Hell
That
yeah.
was absolutely my stomping grounds growing up, because I didn't really buy that many or read that much manga or comics in general. I was able to get some manga a little bit, but most of my comics reading was almost entirely online. So I read so many webcomics back in the mid to late 2000s, and that really like got it into my head of I want to make one of these someday. Uh, and then it just because it's so easy to get in and just do it. So I remember making a couple pages that I threw up on DeviantArt way back in the day, and then over the years started like had various different attempts to like maybe start something, but just didn't ever sit, and then reached a point where I was like, yeah, let's go, let's do it. Made Cape Blast and then got into it, but it's really those old days of like look at the days when like you didn't really have to worry that much about the comment section, and you weren't worrying about Twitter or the numbers. It was just, wow, look at this thing that this cool person posted on DeviantArt or LiveJournal or the Gaia online forums. This is cool. I want to do this.
I think
And I really
like,
miss those
you're
days.
right. You're right. Like thinking of like kind of that expectation, creating comics. And it kind of, again, linking back to Tokyo Pop, I'm so sorry. I'm dragging this, like oh my god.
It fits that.
But, like, you know, you're just like, I want to be a comic artist one day in the sparkly eyes. And then, you know, when you're getting older, it's just like, oh, wow, this is a lot of work. And it's not going to be guaranteed to be any kind of, like,
No.
like sustainable financially at all.
Maybe it's see, I'm like about the numbers though. I think that was actually always there, at least in my memory.
It seemed like it was more about getting the daily deviation on the front page.
Well,
Yeah.
it's more
Yeah.
people like the goal often for the early webcomics was to have enough views to be able to put ads on your webcomic.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, as soon as I reached that number of views, they upped the amount that you needed by like times 10.
Of course.
But I think that was always there, but I feel like you could have a more niche audience.
You could. And
Yeah.
like especially with like how much like those old sites would distill down to like you could set that like I drew this 3D sculpture of Squidward in this modeling program, and DeviantArt had a category for that specifically, and there were lots of things there. It's like you could be niche and like still stand out in a way.
On my way right now to go on DeviantArt and see if there's a 3D modeled Squidward category.
What have you done, Rennie? What have you done?
Be careful what you wish for.
Oh my god.
But it's like, so it's those the starry eye thing is definitely a thing that like Tokyo Pop definitely cashed in on, for better or worse. But it was like it was sort of the wild west of like the web in general. So you could basically do whatever you wanted, and I think there's still certain pockets that have that. And I think it's really good that like there's a lot of different places out there that are trying to sort of rekindle that energy. Though those places seem to get fewer and far between. Pour one out, Smack Jeeves.
Uh,
But there's still like
Oh
Comic
dear.
Fury and places like that, or like there's still like a vibrant community of people with their own sites, and I think that it's still there. It's just moved different places, and
Mhm.
it's I really miss the day that when it was like a lot more. It seemed a lot more optimistic when posting thing of I'm just gonna post this. If it gets 10 likes, that's a good day. Like on DeviantArt or whatever, or like, oh wow, I got a llama. That's cool.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah,
people
and I
just
think
spam
a lot of it
llamas,
has
though.
to do with like gauging what you want
Mhm.
and then kind of also accidentally following the crowd to a certain extent because like, you know, I would be lying if I said that we weren't affected by how our peers are doing in our circles and stuff like that. You know, when someone is doing XYZ, there's a lot of times that people are just like, you know, I want that thing and whatnot. And it does take a lot. It takes a lot to, you know, kind of train yourself to be like, okay, I gotta be happy for that person. And not sounding like I'm sitting there angrily on my phone, stressing out, being like, how dare this person get 5 more likes than whatever. Not like that. But it is a part of all of us as creators to kind of feel inadequate a lot of times.
Yeah.
And I think that especially with something that kind of explodes like this, where you do have mass amounts of options to go around, that's when there's kind of that almost race. And I don't like that it is that race because it shouldn't. It should be a lot of people uplifting each other. But, you know, in the before times, when webcomics were just, you know, small and few and far between, people would make a lot of money out of them because there was not that many of them. And it was just, you know, really, really awesome to gain those clicks because you were one of few, right? And
Yeah.
now it's, I don't want to say this word, but you're kind of quote unquote competing with other people to get that spot in the limelight. And, you know, I can see that as frustrating and I can see that as discouraging. And, you know, it's hard. I think it's hard for creators in general to kind of get out there and want to have, you know, a place in that world to exist, to create, and to be validated with the skills that they have, because all of these are skills that should be treated, you know, with the respect that they deserve. People
Yeah.
should be getting paid the wages that they are owed.
1000% agree. And I think it's interesting with views. I forget who told me this a while ago, but I think it was someone on the stream, but I forget which one of you. I'm very sorry. Someone said, and I think this is great advice when if you're spending a lot of time thinking about likes or follows or the Google Analytics, is imagine that number of people sitting in a room with you and how cool it would feel. Like like even if you're like oh, I only got 50 views this week on my webcomic. Imagine a room filled with 50 people who really who like your comic. That's really cool.
It's pretty rad.
Yeah, I feel like we lose sight about like the actual numbers when all we see are the numbers on the screen. We don't consider the people attached to that. It's like just reorient yourself, and I feel
Yeah.
like that
The modern
could
web is definitely all about kind of depersonalizing those numbers and
Yeah.
not making them feel like a real thing. You'll be
Yeah.
like mad that you can't
it's
reach
like a video game.
you're 2 followers away from reaching 1,000 on Twitter. Like, why won't 2 more people just? But you know, like the people who are out there are real people. Like, there's all kinds of reasons why they might just not have found your account yet, or like not into. You know, there's so much.
It's not anything personal, probably.
They're human beings. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, I think it's also important to consider that most people who read your comic also read a ton of other comics.
Exactly.
And like to expect the same level of engagement every time and on every page, that's just kind of unrealistic.
It's not gonna happen, no. So you gotta make for yourself, and you should be your number one fan, and then everything else will be gravy.
Yeah. And you know, it is hard. It is hard to do that because
Oh, yeah.
being your own cheerleader while creating the comic is a lot of freaking energy.
Holy
it is
crap.
so much energy because, you know, we've discussed in our episode previous about hats. You know, there's a lot that goes into being a webcomic artist. You are everything. You are anything in this. So, you know, I understand getting discouraged. It's a real thing and it 100% happens. But, you know, I think that it's also equally as important to kind of just know when to step back and reevaluate what exactly was the original kind of point to all of this. Were you creating this comic because you wanted to have 1,000 likes on an image every day? Or were you creating it because you needed something to be said at the end of the day, being like, I need this story to come out? And, you know, if that's a process that you have to step back and kind of like reassess and it takes a little bit of time, go for it. You're not on a timeline here as much as it feels like you are. I mean, webcomics do take an insane amount of time to complete, but, you know, a lot of people who talk like this are like early teens to like early 30s, and it's like, no, you're really young. You need to stop talking like this.
I hate the
Like-
fact that the trend of lately is like, oh, once you turn 30, you're dead, and I'm like, I hate that so much because like, I feel like life barely began until I turned 30, so like,
Yeah.
it's an arbitrary number.
Yeah. It's exactly that. It's not definitive. It doesn't, you know, like carve out your journey as an artist. But like I was saying previously, I think it's just really, really easy to get like swept up in everybody else's endeavors because now more than ever, we're kind of in each other's faces with, you know, whose milestones are this and who's done that and stuff like that. And, you know, I think something that's, you know, something that should be talked about more openly is just, you know, in your circles, how to approach that bitterness that you do see with your peers and how to reach them to be like, no, what you're doing is it exists because it's yours. You shouldn't compare it to what this person's doing and to what that person's doing. And again, I think that it's just a conversation that needs to happen eventually because I think it's very drowning to see, you know, what's going on with other people and whatnot.
Yeah, it's funny because when I started my first webcomic, there was a thought at the back of my mind, like, I hope this helps me get more DeviantArt watchers. It was there. It was there even then.
Numbers go for.
Yeah. It's hard to avoid all the platforms, including back in the day. It's definitely become more visible, but like the idea of having a number attached to your online presence and the number indicates how like important you are to other people is kind of a messes with your head a bit.
Like I think it was nice with Comic Genesis because and like your own personal sites because like the number of followers is not in your face. All you saw were like the stats for how well individual pages did, you know, and like how many and like your overall views, but you don't know how many recurring people go unless they commented.
Yeah.
You know, so it was a bit less of a like kind of like out of sight, out of mind type thing. Where now you're like, oh, look at all these subscribers. I only have like 4. So
Yeah. And like it doesn't even 100%, yep, that's a word.
It is
100%
now.
translate to people reading your comic. Like 2.bajillion subs doesn't mean 2.bajillion people reading your comic. 2.bajillion Twitter followers don't mean that there are actual 2.bajillion people following you either. And there's been a lot of talk always in the creative community about the algorithm, and how dominating and annoying it is. But I think that, like, it's a frustrating game that we're never gonna win. And I know that sounds like give up hope, but no. It's kind of like, you know, I think it's, again, really good to step back, reevaluate why you create the comic or the art or whatever, music, writing, whatever you do, and be like, okay, is this for me or is this for WolfDog420 on Twitter? Like, who is this for? And I think that just the reset really helps kind of get through those days that you do feel kind of like down in the dumps about that stuff. Because say if you do have 2 bajillion followers. I'm going to use that now.
2 bajillion.
2 bajillion.
It doesn't necessarily translate to, I'm going to post this picture and 2 bajillion people. That's not even, why did I even
That's
say
not
that?
even a lot of followers, though.
That's
Yeah.
two. That's two, and maybe
That's just like 2
That's
and
nothing.
That's 3
almost
rounded
3
up.
followers.
That's an extremely large value of
Translate
2.
to the likes that you get. Like, you know, you're going to post like whatever, and it's not going to be like, okay, so that means all of my followers are automatically going to interact with this. And it's scary. People get caught up in that, and you're just like, oh, come back. It's scary. Don't go down that road.
Thane, what about you?
Oh, well, I mean, I mentioned it a little bit that I was big on very into DeviantArt as a teenager, and my friends in high school had other friends who were making a webcomic, and they showed their webcomic to me, and I was like blown away by the idea that you could just kind of do this. Because like I grew up reading like all kinds of comics. Like I actually used to be really into DC comics, and I read like a bunch of Batman and stuff like that, and it didn't click for me until like I guess around high school that comics were just a thing that people like me could do with their own hands. And then seeing these peers of mine who had a comic out there, and not only that, it was extremely popular for like 2006. Like it had a ton of readers. It was #1 on top webcomics, which was still a thing. It was a thing back then. It's been a thing for so long.
I remember getting in the top 50, and it felt so good.
I know, this comic was #1. It got into the local news. Like,
Wow.
it was a big deal, and it was just like this yaoi webcomic that I'm not going to name on the stream.
I know what it is. Don't worry.
A hopping forum. Like, people would cosplay it in groups at Anime North, which was the local convention at the time. Like, it was huge, and I was like, oh my god, I feel like I could make one of these. So I don't know, I just kind of started doing it, and never stopped.
Yowie wowie.
Yeah, I feel like the ability of like just a random comic to get to that point of popularity, it's like it's tougher nowadays. There's a lot of competition. Like the bar of polish and professionality has gotten way higher. It's for a newcomer starting a webcomic, even if it's like a pretty good webcomic, like it's very difficult to get noticed these days. But like back then in 2006, you could like do something and do very little in the way of promotion, but there would be people out there looking for things to read who would find your stuff. I don't know, it was interesting. The expectations were so different across the board at that time. Like when I was first launching Geralt, my first comic, I actually did not know how to. The things that I didn't know were incredible. It never occurred to me to have an update schedule. So I was drawing pages like in classrooms and stuff, and I would make 8 in a single day, and then scan all of them, and then just dump them all on the website at the same time. And then go back later the same week and be like, here's another 8 pages.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. I was updating.
What we all strive for.
Yeah. I was manually adding them to the archive with HTML. Like I would save like a HTML document, and then I would change the number in the page, and then I would update the next arrow so that it would go to the next page.
Oh my god, it was
so
bad.
painful. I kept that up for hundreds of pages.
The things that we had to do.
I don't recommend it. I manually updated an RSS feed because I wanted my comic to, like, there are websites that will take a webcomic's RSS feed and then bump it to the top of a listing when it updates. At the time, the site that I was doing this for was called the Webcomic List. They're still around. They are extremely, like, if you go to the site, you're like, boy, this looks 2 decades old. But at the time,
Two decades old.
Yeah. That was where I wanted it to, show up. So I was like, I need an RSS feed for this. How do I do that? Oh, okay. I save a new, like, XML document that I have to update, like, every day and save it and overwrite the old one on my file. It was terrible. Needless to say, having a comment field was far beyond my ability at the time. So I just didn't. And I don't know, like, the peace of mind that brings you, just, like, not having a comments field is pretty wild. I tell you what.
What? I tell you what.
I tell you what. I feel like, in a way, like, I love having comments on my comic now, but yeah. I feel like I'm much more, I guess, level-headed about it now from, like, spending so many years just not having it and, like, kind of getting used to the idea that, like, nobody's looking at my stuff. But it's a pleasant surprise when anybody is. But yeah.
I think you're right. I wish to also build the immunity of that kind of, like, not obsessively checking to be like, okay, who left what or something like that. Because, like, I also think that it's, like, putting pressure on my readers to also come up with something always on comment or our comic pages is another thing that, we might fall into as well. Thinking that. So I I gotta do the reassessing thing. I'm like, okay. This doesn't mean anything against the work or anything like that. It just is what it is, and it's interesting. Webcomics have truly transformed. But you talking about manually updating your pages like that made me think of how much I don't have the energy to do that nowadays, and I feel so sad.
Don't feel bad. You don't gotta. Nobody has to.
Even back
I'm so
then, you
happy
didn't
nobody
have
has
to.
to anymore.
But, like, not that specifically. I remember in the olden days where I would have a day dedicated to being on DeviantArt and just looking through people's art, making sure to comment and save and organize my favorites gallery, and just kind of making connections that way. And I find that I miss that now. I really do. Like, the most popular platform to be on right now is obviously Twitter and stuff like that, unfortunately.
Those dedicated art spaces.
Yeah, there is no dedicated art space that I find comfortable to be in, to be quite honest. I had asked, like, a month ago or whatever, Twitter, like, where do I actually go now? Like, where, who, what, where, when, why posts what that's actually, it feels good to post and interact with art. And I've been mostly doing it on Discord now. That is where I lie.
Discord's cool.
My home. My internet home.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of talk, too, about how a lot of, like, fandom and specialty spaces, because they moved to Discord, it's actually a lot less accessible to people on the outside. Like, from the people going, oh, hey, can I find this, like, vague, like, Sailor Moon doll from the 1980s, that information used to be maintained on, like, forums and websites that were publicly accessible, but not anymore. And it's the same for, like, art tips and such, like, too. Because you can't really search for Twitter outside of Twitter. Can't search Discord outside of Discord,
Pinterest,
so that
but
information is being lost.
Yeah. And even with Pinterest, I'm sorry, it's an
I hate
absolute...
I hate it with the passion of 1,000 songs.
I loathe it.
It is an absolute hot mess. I'm just like, I don't know where to find anything, but I will say, and this is so hecking random, but after the great collapse of Tumblr on December 17th, 20 whatever, the supernatural fandom apparently moved to
You're not going to say Pinterest, are you?
yes, they moved to Pinterest, and apparently they're thriving.
Wow.
Because, like,
It's
it's
incredible.
Good
it's a
for
good
them.
place to post your mood boards, and that's what a lot of the posts were of, like, you
I
know.
guess that's valid.
Yeah. So honestly, hats off to them. I respect you, Destiel fans who are on Pinterest and thriving.
However, I am still, and I will never not be salty at Pinterest for utterly destroying all of my Google image searches when I'm looking for references of things.
I do minus Pinterest on every image search I do.
That's just so annoying to
Probably
have to
smart.
do, though.
Yep. It's like you have to be like some weird like okay, I'm gonna search for like a reference of I don't know, a sword, but I'm gonna go on incognito mode because if Pinterest, you know, finds out
Mm.
everything
If
will
they
be
weren't so
sword
forceful about like, hey, you should view this in the app. Are you sure you don't want to view this in the app?
bad. Yep.
Come
You're
on,
gonna
you
log
want
in.
Are
to
you sure you don't want to
Yeah,
download our
log in.
extension bar?
I refuse to make a Pinterest account, like, purely out of spite. Like, it makes it very annoying, because I'm sure I could probably find references more easily if I just made a Pinterest account, and I could look all the way down a page without getting that giant pop-up that's like, you need to log in.
Just make
I'm
the wolf
just
dude
so
use the
annoyed.
Wolf Dog account.
No. I
Yeah.
refuse to ever log into a Pinterest in my whole online life.
You know how they make the Pinterest little plugin that you have to install on your browser in order to actually pin things to your board? They should make an anti-Pinterest plugin where you hit it and it removes all Pinterest things from your internet.
I'd use it.
Yeah.
Use that, smash that button all that time.
Yeah, I can't with Pinterest. I had one for like all of like 3 days before I got annoyed.
Honestly, I respect it. Absolutely respect it. Oh god. And you think that you're like, oh, like a giant board to pin things sounds so great, but honestly, it only works for people doing their weddings and moms who want to plan their sweet 16s for their kid that has way too much money. I don't know.
If they weren't so
Theory, it sounds
invasive.
good for art. But then you learn that you literally cannot upload things yourself. And then
Yeah.
finding the source for things, especially if it's from like, you know, Karen 75 or something,
Karen
is
75?
completely impossible.
Wait,
Yeah.
so things can't be uploaded directly to Pinterest?
No.
This just makes it even more annoying because there are so many times when I've been looking for like a reference for something and the perfect image was only on Pinterest, and no matter how hard I looked, I could not find a non-Pinterest version of the same image. How does that even happen? I used to think, oh, clearly somebody just uploaded this from a weird archive and it only lives on Pinterest. But if it's gotta live somewhere else on the internet, why
pin
can't
it-
I find it?
You pin it on
No,
all
no.
the websites, but you have to manually add the provenance to it.
Nobody does that. I hate
Exactly. Like, I've literally had some pins that would just reference each other.
it. Ugh.
That
I
is
didn't even know
hot
that,
garbage.
but that sounds annoying.
Pinterest
Yeah.
session.
That is so hot garbage. In my day, we had DeviantArt galleries, and we could just search them up and blah blah blah.
But hear me out, GeoCities.
Oh, bringing me way back.
Go back, I want to be monkey.
No. Does anyone else remember Elfwood?
Yes.
Vaguely. I was never on it. I
But it
think
has
you needed to be
elves.
approved. Yes, but it was very, it was too pro.
Oh,
was too pro
because
for me.
you had initially when they opened, you had to submit your portfolio and they'd approve it, and that was such a milestone for teenage me, was when I was actually finally approved.
Oh my
They-
god.
They did eventually open it up for to like the public, so anyone could make an account, but you still had to have individual people like pieces approved to make sure it fit the theme of their gallery, because they didn't want anything that wasn't essentially speculative fiction on it. They didn't allow fan art for the longest time, like at all, unless it was novel fan art. So you could find, like, say, Lord of the Rings fan art, but you couldn't find, you know, Lena Inverse from Slayers. So yeah, it was very like strict as far as galleries go, but because it was actually a curated gallery, and this actually did predate DeviantArt.
Yeah, in theory, it sounds like it would have been perfect for me to like do, but I feel
But
like
you-
by the time they opened it up to like the public, I had already kind of moved on, probably to Tumblr, and it just no longer
It doesn't exist anymore
at all.
at all.
Oh,
Oh,
geez,
no.
I thought it continued existing for a
I
little
want
while.
to say they closed in 2012, but I could be wrong.
Hmm.
Let me Google this.
Quick question: Does this drawing app have a magic wand tool?
Oh, it shut
Yes.
down 2016.
I did all my lines on the wrong layer.
And it's literally just the. Oh, actually, no.
It's
That's
a
a
lasso.
Yeah. Hmm.
Blow it out
that's-
for your lines.
Yeah. I'm gonna re-ink it.
Wrong
Here we
layer.
go.
Draw the layer.
Oh,
Carl.
wow, I found some stuff that in June 2001, Elfwood closed due to death threats and reopened a month later.
Oh my
Whoa.
god.
Whoa.
That's much more serious. That's a bit darker than I thought it was gonna get.
Yeah, I'm like, why?
Yikers.
Why?
It just goes to show even back then people weren't very nice.
Ah. Oh, internet.
Oh gosh. Never change, please.
Please change.
Please change it. We're not- please.
Oh my god. I feel like Discord is definitely like my little space for communities now. But the point that Ray made previously about like it not being as accessible is definitely a thing, because you can't access it unless you have Discord, and then so on and so forth. And you know what? I am 85 years old, and I get tired of making new accounts for things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a mood.
Like it should just, you know, there should be more encouragement to just explore the internet again.
Oh, I miss Stumble Upon so much.
Oh, that was fun. I like that site.
Oh, right.
Speaking of Stumble Upon, there is actually a current website which kind of does that, but just for webcomics, called Random Webcomic.
Oh, that's
Oh.
So if you want to just find a random webcomic, you can check out that website.
That sounds dangerous. I'm gonna check it out.
I'm gonna go there immediately.
No more time.
I'll post a link in the chat.
Oh my god.
Here it is.
Well, that's cute.
Go read some random webcomics. Actually, I think that's the next question that we had was, what are you reading?
Yeah. What are you reading, Thane? You asked it.
Oh, I was gonna ask you.
Answer your question.
But okay, I'll answer it first. I just heard of a comic called Dimitra and the Silver Mask. It's a horror comic. It's real spooky. It's only 47 pages so far. Like it's pretty well just started. It's kind of in the prologue phase, I think. But
Link?
the art is gorgeous. Hang on, I have a link. This
Because
link looks
47
weird.
pages I can catch up with. And
Yeah.
a horror comic sounds great for this time of year.
Yes, I
can
agree.
So festive.
Oh, I need to make an account to put the link on Twitch, but I'll drop it in the Discord and it can be posted into the Twitch.
Okay.
'Cause yeah.
I will post
So
it in the Twitch.
excellent. Yeah, I'm really I'm enjoying it, and I'm looking forward to the next page. And I've also been on absolute tenterhooks with the current arc in Sleepless Domain, going places.
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
And then, of course, all the comics in our wonderful ScreenTones podcast.
Aw, that's nerdy. I've been reading Blackout City because I absolutely adore the old manga look. Screen toning in there is absolutely gorgeous, and the inking is one of my favorites, and the aesthetic is top notch. So that's me right now. Oh, I made a big circle.
Borge.
Right? Meow.
Right, meow. How do I uncircle my circle? Well, the
Control
circle's
Z?
there. I think it's there too long, so here we go.
Oh no. Miranda. Huh?
What am I reading right now? I don't know.
We could pass it
can-
back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Let me think. I gotta think.
Gotta
I mean, most
noodle.
of the stuff I'm reading is on webtoons because
Ooh.
my life's been chaos lately, and the webtoon app is really convenient. But
Lamb.
I will think.
Gosh, I can't read.
A terrible confession.
Like gasp.
I actually no, I don't read. I need to read more. It's weird because like I follow so many people on Twitter that have webcomics, and I need to sit down and actually dedicate like a weekend to catching up to like their 1,000-page archive. But really, there's some where I'm just like, this is so beautiful and it's so lovely. Like I look at the page updates and I'm just like, I don't know what's happening here, but I am deeply enjoying this art, and I know that's not right. But at my current brain space, I'm just like, pretty art. That's lovely. There are
Yeah, I feel that brain space right now. But what I have been reading is Cast Off.
Ooh, yeah.
That's probably the latest
yeah.
one.
Cast off is good.
It's just such a good one and so cute. And great art, so that's the one. But I'm in the same brain space. A why? Do we need a why?
No, I mean, not particularly.
Okay.
You don't have
it-
to.
It's just a fun story, and the art's really great, and I really love Star's style for her characters and stuff. And it's just like a chill, like I don't have to worry about like stressing over what's happening so much. Like it's a really great story, but it's also just I don't know, it's just very nice.
Yeah, like more casual. You don't have
Yeah.
to know all the details, the deep lore.
Yeah.
That's valid. That's absolutely valid.
But deplore.
Uh-oh. It's Finn.
Yeah, I was just wanted to say deplore is important.
Deep lore.
The deplore.
What comic are you reading, Finn?
The comic I've been able to keep up with because I have similar problems to Claire. Is definitely Tiger.
Oh yes.
Because
I need to read that one.
the art is gorgeous, the story is super interesting, the characters are fantastic, it's very gay. It has some mysterious, darker parts. Also, it mostly plays like out at sea, and I love that. I love boats.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I also love Phantom Marine,
Yes.
which I've also been able to keep up with.
Oh,
Oh yeah, I am also reading Phantom Marine.
I think we
And
all
like
are.
Yeah.
all of the
Ghost-
ScreenTones comics.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Ghost Junk also. It's also one of the rare comics I could keep up with.
Oh, don't read that one.
No, it's good. Read it. Definitely read it.
Don't listen to Crispy, read it.
Yeah, don't listen.
Read the comics. Consume comics!
Oh my god.
Honestly, though, like it was a mood the past week seeing people like post their most read webtoons episode things, and people are just like, if you're a webtoon creator, you've probably read like thousands and thousands of pages of your own work, and people are just like, that's fine. I
The
understand.
only way to
I mean,
know
you
if
have to
any of
go
your
there to
people
see the comments. Yeah.
Right.
Oh
So,
my god.
The other week, somebody made like an app thing or like a browser extension that would like apparently automatically notify you of like comments
Oh,
that were made
yeah.
on a webtoon series. And then apparently it started like putting like ads and things on people's feeds
No.
and like interfering with
Wow.
normal browser stuff. So I don't know if I can recommend it anymore.
No.
It was a nice idea.
That's lame.
It'd be even nicer if Webtoon actually gave people the ability to be notified of comments, like within
But
their
at
own
least
website.
you can opt in or opt out of comics now.
That's true. You can actually block and delete like manual comments now as a Canvas
Oh, really?
creator, which is
Finally.
neat.
Yeah,
It's a great
they
step.
earlier this week they put that.
Took
in.
them
That's
Yeah.
not available for
Long
originals
time
now?
coming.
Not for originals yet, just for Canvas.
Ooh.
Really?
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know why. I guess they use a different like back end or something.
Maybe
but-
for analytics or whatever for
yeah, I don't know.
originals.
Oh, that's
That's
It's
gotta
weird
be
how slow they
frustrating.
are. Yeah.
It's weird, but also at this point, it's just the norm for them. So
yeah.
I guess so. I expect nothing.
Oh god. Oh.
Ray,
Ray, what are
Ray, what are you reading?
Yeah, right?
Okay, so I only keep up with a handful of comics like per update. All of them here. But I binge a lot. I recently finished binging at San's insistence Covenant.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh.
I also read I'm gonna butcher this, Rutan Joy's Tragic Comedy,
Oh.
because the art for that is like super pretty. I'll post that in.
Oh yes. Share
Yeah,
the
that's
web
also on Webtoons. So I was going to like planning on reading more comics on Webtoons during my lunch break, but it turns out the internet at my work is too bad to
Oh
do so.
no.
Even if I download the series.
Big rip.
So maybe I should just buy comics and read them at work during my lunch. Like
God, I
Hive
love
Works.
Scented.
Yeah,
Work?
I have a what is it? Oh my gosh, Daughter of the Lilies.
Oh yeah.
I did the Kickstarter
Wonderful.
for that one, so I have the gorgeous book that came with it,
Yeah.
and I still need to read it because there's some that I'm like I would rather wait. Like I want to catch up with a physical copy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's
I
just
get that.
easier.
Yeah, I feel like with a physical copy, and this could be like an old person thing, I don't know. But like when I process information, it's easier to just flip back 2 pages than to click back 2 pages, which makes absolutely no sense. But
It
that is
is
how my
though.
brain.
It's not well, maybe it's an old person thing, but I don't think I don't think it's an old person thing.
We all are old.
Why would there be
Oh my god. But like that's definitely a thing, is like finding the time to read comics is really, really hard for creators. But I know that it's something that we have to do and keep up and stuff like that. And not like a, stress yourself out, do it. But also at the same sense, like, you're still gathering ideas and ways to kind of traverse this webcomic world with all of that. And one of the really cool things is to just be inspired by how other people do their works and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I learn a lot from that. Comics.
Comics.
Reading
Granny,
comics gets me fired up. So
Also catching up on everyone's comics in the podcast. Though right now I am currently binging through all of the archive of Delphina's comic Sombulus.
Yes.
Because that is one of the ones that I am woefully behind on.
Oh,
Speak
wow.
of the devil.
Yeah.
Hello!
a wild
A wild
Delphina.
Delphina!
Oh my god, you summoned Delphina by saying that you're reading Sombulus. This is the best thing ever.
Oh. Yeah.
Sombulus is great.
It
I
is
love
fun.
how
It's so
Delphina is a
fun. So I'm having a
character.
lot of fun with that. I'm also rereading and catching up on the archive on the backlog of Cassiopeia Quinn, which is a fun sci-fi romp. It's very fun. And the colors just speak to me on a very personal level because I'm like, ooh, shiny colors, big sparkle. And I'm also rereading for like the 80 jillionth time "O Human Star" by Blue Delaquanti. That comic is actually completely finished. But it's such a beautiful comic. It's drawn in a very simple style, but it's got such a good queer trans message, and it makes me cry every time. It's so
Like
good.
if you cry every time.
Oh, yes!
Aw!
Whew. Sorry,
Like if
my browser glitched.
Oh my god.
I'll post a link to that one in those two in the description.
That's interesting though. So far, like, I like hearing people's answers. That sounds ominous. So far, you're hopefully good.
No pressure.
But it's really interesting hearing why you read comics and what kind of like gravitates you to this stuff. So what does gravitate you beyond like art styles, or is it just usually pretty art draws you in for reading that stuff?
Pretty shiny
Yeah.
go burr.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
I think
like,
art is. Oh.
No, go for it, Miranda.
Well, I think the art, like with webcomics, is a huge factor to draw you in.
Mhm.
At least for me. But whether or not that's what keeps you
Yeah.
or keeps me, it like the art gets me there, and then once I'm there, the story has to keep me staying. I guess that's a weird. That sounds a weird way to phrase it, but
Yeah. But it's totally true. Like it draws you in, but what is the hook that kind of anchors you to continue going and committing to that? Because like I guess one thing that's really imperative to webcomics is that it is a time commitment on several different levels. Wow, that's a sentence. But yeah, several different levels of like creating it, but also as a reader, like kind of digesting it and then having to keep up with the updates because, you know, one really cool and, I don't know, a unique thing about webcomics is that it does have its updates week to week or month to month or whatever, and it's being created as you read it as opposed to being one finished piece. So yeah, that's one good thing to consider is what keeps you there and whatnot.
I just make too many friends in the webcomic world, and I'm just like, oh, I want to see what they're doing, and that's how I read 50 million comics.
Same,
Friendship.
same actually.
Yeah, and I think that's almost like a degree of like word of mouth when people talk about their work, and you're just like, okay, what's this about? What are you talking about? And yeah, like getting to know people and then diving into that stuff is definitely something that I do as well. Word of mouth works really well with me though, when people are just like, hey, you like this thing and I'm gonna suggest this to you, and usually it's pretty successful with that.
Word of mouth is so important in webcomics.
It is.
I mean, a
that's
lot of the
just
time when
nice.
I start something new, it's because somebody told me, oh, this is good, or I think you'll like this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the cool thing about that is that you get to like automatically have somebody to talk to about the thing when you catch up, and you're like, oh my gosh, I just read the thing that you told me about, and so it kind of like builds the enthusiasm between you that way. That's always fun.
I agree. I mean, like, that's like most of the time when Fane's like, okay, I'm watching this, and I'm like, okay, I know we're all going to talk about it, so I'm going to watch it too.
I will not watch anything quietly. I'm always going to yell about it, so.
Oh my god, until I finally get you to play Zelda. God.
One of the. Maybe
I can't
soon.
believe.
Okay, right, Clam? Right? It's got elves. It's got
Pointy
elves.
ears.
Elves! They're all elves!
But
Elves
he
and
doesn't-
magic.
Okay, but counterpoint does not have silver hair.
Yes, it does.
Yeah,
it does.
the villain in Skyward Sword.
I don't know. Villain though? I don't know. Not quite prominent.
Is it
what
George
happened?
does nothing for you?
There is another, like, couple guys. Oh, you know what? I feel like Thane would love the Rito. Because they're all, like, not all. Some of them are silver-haired Rito. Okay, you just gotta play it, okay?
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Which Zelda do you want Thane to play first?
Well, I gave Thane our Wii that has Majora's Mask, Ocarina of Time,
Twilight Princess is the one I'm most hyped to play.
and
We'll
then
probably
we
start
gave
it
you
very
that one
soon,
too,
actually.
right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yes, and then I think that we also gave you Skyward Sword.
I'll go through it after this and I'll let you know. But I plan to do it very soon. I have some time. I have some actual time for playing video games that is not automatically accounted for by my job or by other deadlines. So finally, I'll play some games.
It's related to webcomic reading again.
Just not the critically
Yeah.
acclaimed Final Fantasy 14.
No!
My schedule has time for 2 games a year, okay?
Oh my
We
god.
don't the queue longer right now.
No. Do not play!
Oh my god. It almost makes me want to go back and talk about inspirations from our very first episode.
Yeah.
God.
Do you know what my first inspiration was ever for making comics?
Tell
I want
us.
to know.
Legend of Zelda.
Yes!
Oh, it came full circle.
I'm losing my mind.
I'm not even kidding, because there was a comic that ran in the Nintendo Power magazine in the 90s that was based
feel like I
on
know
Legend
this.
of Zelda: Link to the Past. You can actually buy it as a standalone book. It's very good. Yeah, and it just kind of like, it took some liberties with the plot of the game, but it was just the first like manga style comic that I ever got, because like it really wasn't big yet in the early 90s, but then you got this like this cool continuous story in this magazine that my brother got and I stole. So like, yeah, it just blew my mind. And like I made this whole like Zelda OC who was like totally a Mary Sue, but that was okay. And I had this comic that I drew in sketchbooks like during history class in high school. I was like, look at my comic, and it was kind of bad, and I stopped it after a little while. But that's what got me going, and that's what got the stamina going for me. Legend of Zelda.
Making bad comics is the first step to making good comics.
Mhm.
It's true.
Yeah,
And Zelda.
And Zelda. Gotta have that Zelda.
Yeah, it feels really weird to talk about this, and I think I did mention it in that Inspirations episode that was the first freaking episode of this podcast. But like one of the first comics that I remember reading that kind of put that seed in my brain was the I think it's the 1996 full omnibus compilation of an arc of Superman comics called The Return of Superman, which is the follow-up to The Death of Superman. Which was a big event that apparently is infamous now in like the comics industry as being kind of the kickoff point for like death losing all meaning in superhero comics. Because I guess DC discovered that if they kill off a major character, it sells a lot of comic titles. So they were like, we're gonna kills Superman. And it was like a huge deal, and it did sell a lot of comic titles, but of course they couldn't keep Superman dead. So after a while, like the story arc progressed all the way back around, and Superman comes back. And then after that point, like, I don't know, readers kind of lost faith in death being important in like superhero comics in like American culture or whatever. But I had no idea about that at the time because I was like a little dumb baby, and I just read this comic about like multiple fake Supermen popping up in the wake of like the real Superman's death, and then the real one comes back, and it was this whole very, very dramatic, like fairly violent, probably too violent than I should have been reading in elementary school, but I was obsessed. I was absolutely obsessed with it, and I started like tracing panels and stuff like that, and I don't know, it changed my life.
That's so cute, though.
It's funny because like all of my work now is extremely manga inspired. Like if you ask me like what comic made the biggest, like, I don't know, impact on my art style, I'd probably say Inuyasha or maybe ElfQuest. But like Superman was the one that actually started it.
That's so
That's
interesting.
so interesting. Oh my god. What about you, Miranda? Miranda.
My inspirations? Is that?
Yeah.
Well, like at least for Into the Swell, I just really like pirates and elves,
Yes.
so I put them together.
I
And
do it.
like definitely a lot of like Pirates of the Caribbean for that, but I don't know. Like one of the first webcomics I read was Muted, which I love that one. But so I kind of started with the like thicker outlines and like that style wise, that's kind of where my inspiration started. I didn't read a lot of manga. I still haven't. I'm working my way through JoJo, but
I respect that.
Nice.
it's a slow process.
It's a bizarre adventure.
It is. It is a
They
very
were
bizarre.
not lying. Oh my god.
It's in the title.
Yeah. But yeah, so definitely not a like. I mean, I feel like my art, if it's not like inspired by manga, but also there's like so many manga related or manga based tutorials for things and like how to draw them. So that probably came in, like fell into things, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like I got into comics way after all of you, so I feel like such a noob.
No! Never feel that way. Everybody's journeys are always going to be different with that stuff.
I'm jealous because I'm kind of old and I got into comics like very early-ish, but like they were bad. They were kind of bad. There's so much good stuff right now.
Yeah,
And it's so easy to get.
I guess I got into it at a good time.
I
you did.
one
It's
comic that got
accessible.
me into webcomics was one that I could talk about openly without feeling embarrassed.
I'm waiting.
No.
No.
Move on. Who's next?
This will be a secret forever.
Tune
Oh
in on
my
a future
God.
episode for Thane to reveal that.
Oh my
That's when we start up the Patreon. It's like if you subscribe to our Patreon, you get this secret episode where we talk about our shameful influences.
At this goal, Thane will reveal the
And we just
forbidden.
revealed everyone's inspired by
secret.
Candy
It should
talking.
it should tell you enough that I know, and I won't tell anyone else.
Oh
Thank you. You got my back.
Forbidden knowledge.
Oh.
Because I used to read it too.
Oh.
What about you, Pavement Clam?
But clam. Nobody on the stream is gonna know what that means.
Do any of us really know what it means anyway? Like
That is valid. For context, I don't. What was it actually?
I
Like
think it was pavement egg first.
yes, it was like like cooking an egg on the pavement or something, and then it's just like cook a clam on the pavement or something. I don't remember.
That saying of like put the rubber to the road, and I was like, there's pavement involved. I swear.
I think that's what it was. There was something like that. Oh gosh, Discord screen names and the story journey behind them. Oh,
They change a lot.
We're feeling a lot of lore in this episode.
inspirations. I think for me, probably the first like long form webcomic that I really got into way back in the day, and it's still going a little bit, is actually the Meek.
Oh, I remember that one.
So
That's
seeing that
classic.
one, and it's been on hiatus again for a little while now, and I'm waiting for it to come back, but I'm patient. It's okay. It's just, gosh, it was so gorgeous back then just to see something that was done so beautifully and put online. I was just like, this is what webcomics can be. Like it was such an interesting sort of thing to see evolve and see other people, start to emulate as well in terms of quality. For actual like story inspirations, I will always go back to Final Fantasy X.
God. Love
If
the
you-
Final Fantasies.
By the end of this comic, you will probably look at it and be like, "Oh gosh, this was a lot of Final Fantasy X, just kind of wrapped up in a different package." And I'm just like, you know
the
what?
Final
That's valid.
Fantasy X fan fiction.
Yes.
Where's the Blitzball? Is Chet gonna play Blitzball?
Oh my.
Paged
Oh
up
my
Pavel
god.
is just Titus.
Yes, I want to see us play Blitzball. New short comic idea, please.
Oh my god. I need a sport. I need a sports ball for this world that's not Blitzball, but is like a thinly veiled Blitzball now. Oh gosh. I need to go
A
full circle.
pufferfish.
Yeah.
I
Oh
love
my gosh!
And avoid poisoning.
Well, like if
What are
it's a
some
dead
synonyms for
pufferfish,
blitz?
then
Barrage ball. Bombardment ball.
Oh my god.
I love the pufferfish. That has to be in there. Oh my gosh!
Yes.
Other
How about-
things.
How
Like
about blast
Wind
ball?
Waker. Blast ball?
Jesper said in the chat puffball.
Puffball.
Like just puffball. Other things like, I don't know, Wind Waker was a big one. Oh yeah, I also really like the book series His Dark Materials.
oh, that's a good
It's,
one.
I don't know how many people know it.
do.
It's the series that the Golden Compass is from.
Oh.
It's really good. I read it when I was a teenager, and it sparked a lot of ideas in me. And
It
I'm
has
just like,
gay
"Ooh."
angels in it too.
It does have gay angels, yes. I didn't realize it
Every
until after the fact.
Oh my god.
It's kind of like the atheist reprise of Narnia.
Yeah.
It is actually,
Oh,
yes.
yeah. That is incredible. Oh my god.
Gay angels.
Gay angels.
Narnia. But
Angels.
gay angels.
What about you, Finn?
Um,
Finn?
am I? No, I thought I was muted for a second. Because I have been muting myself on and off because Pumpkin is freaking out. She's just screaming.
Oh,
Pumpkin!
Pumpkin wants
Yeah.
to be in the stream.
She wants to be in the stream. I think she wants attention. No, but when it comes to inspirations, I think the things that got me into comics were Sailor Moon
Yes.
and generally Arina Tanemura, even though I kind of developed away from that. And I think the first actual webcomic I read that was also branded as a webcomic was Hannah Is Not a Boy's Name,
Yes.
Ooh,
which I was at the time obsessed with.
me too. I have a rare print copy of it that I got at a convention that the creator happened to be attending.
Oh my god.
Oh,
Two of it. Yeah. I don't. Probably no more will ever be made, so it's a rare item.
Oh.
So
Yeah,
word to the
it
wise:
is.
if somebody is selling a print copy of a comic, buy it.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah, absolutely. Oh my god, I forgot about that. But yeah, you're right. I remember it being on DeviantArt, and I was like, wow,
Yeah,
wow.
it was on DeviantArt, and it kind of like blew my mind when it like. I personally, the only thing I was used to was like, as I said, Animex, and
Mhm.
this was like very traditional page layouts. And then comes Hannah's Not a Boy's Name, and it's vertical. And I mean, that was normal for webcomics at the time, but I had never seen it. And then some pages really made use of like it being a webcomic. So like you have blood flow, and you have like a really long vertical page, and the blood is flowing down and stuff like that. And that was really like interesting for me, and it kind of like opened my eyes what you could do with storytelling on a web-based platform.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the next best thing I then got into, which I don't know if you can classify it as a webcomic, would be Homestuck.
yeah. You know what? Valid. It's absolutely valid.
Homestuck is valid in this chat.
Yeah,
I'd call it a webcomic.
Yeah.
I was into it
Of
for a while too.
course.
Homestuck,
Yeah.
I don't know. Homestuck is not valid, but it it has a special place in my heart, and it also did a lot of things that I had never seen before. Like it had prominent gay characters in the storyline, and it kind of showed me that like female characters can be interesting in comics too. Um, it's I don't know, it's a big mess, but it had good parts.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was there for a lot of people at a certain point in their life, and I feel like one of the things that really impresses me about Homestuck is how easy it was to make like your Homestuck Sona, your Troll Sona, or whatever, and like really apply parts of the narrative to yourself and your identity, and that helps build people.
Yeah, also the kind of hype. I don't think there like was ever another webcomic that was that popular. Like
No.
where people actually overran conventions with their troll cosplays and stuff.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I think Delphi's right on that fact that it has that kind of world that you can put yourself into almost with the sonas and stuff. And
Yeah.
again, it was like there for people at a certain time. I think Homestuck itself is a comic that had to be enjoyed when you were there.
Yeah.
Because like
Yeah.
I can't, like, I've never read Homestuck. Like, Space tried to get me to do it, and I was like, I don't understand. And then, like, even me going back to, like, the archived version, I'm just like, I can't. Like, I don't get it.
You had to
It
be
made
there.
no sense to me, maybe as a teenager, but, like, now I'm just like, I can't process this. But I think it's a comic of its time, and it's definitely, like, you had to be there.
I feel like I need like more stamina to be able to get into it, and I don't have that anymore. Like I've actually tried listening to people actually reading it out loud on YouTube, and I actually got fairly far into it. But like, and that's actually a fun experience on its own. But yeah, to go any further, I'm just like, oh my god, I need a long time to dedicate to this, and I don't have it.
And temporal context, for lack of a better
Yes.
word.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think nowadays Homestuck is mostly kind of valuable for the works it inspired, because it inspired a lot of other webcomic artists, but also other creators. Like we wouldn't have stuff like Undertale or Deltarune without Homestuck's existence. So
Yeah. I 100% agree.
There's like actually a site where somebody built like a MS Paint adventure, like it's a place, it's a webcomic host basically, but if you want to do that kind of style of like single panel and then there's like maybe choices or something like that, like we've seen a couple of them like in the Spider Forest application seasons, I feel like. But like, yeah, there's like an entire site that somebody built just to make these kinds of narratives, and people are like really making, it's not even like the trolls and stuff, like not even those characters, but that style of storytelling too was very inspirational for a lot of people.
And it's something that only works on the web.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen those Homestuck printed books, and that's a hot mess. I will definitely say that.
They made books?
Yeah.
My brother has one of those.
Wow.
And it's really not the same.
Viz is matching them.
They're massive. Really... I see them at like Indigo or Barnes and Noble has them. But they're massive and they're really ugly.
I mean, it is very hard because you have like one panel and then you have like a wall of text that's basically chat history. How do you print that?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's like another topic too to kind of discuss within the webcomic community is like, you know, kind of understanding your medium in the long run. Like if you're someone who's just like, oh yeah, like my format is going to be having audio to enjoy the story, and it's going to have moving images, it's going to have choices to be made. Does it really suit to be printed, or should I just really, you know, encourage my website, which unfortunately Homestuck didn't get to really do, because I think the only way to fully get the real experience is this fan made like a new kind of reconstructed version of the site or something like that. But that really sucks. It's not properly 100% archived. But regardless, like, you know, understanding that medium and what you kind of want to do with it in the long run kind of maybe would alleviate that pressure to need to print, because you don't need to print. If it's a webcomic, it's a webcomic for a reason too.
Although at the same time, I feel like that kind of thinking has been what tripped up a lot of people in like starting a comic, being like, I don't need to print, I won't think about it, and then coming back to it later and discovering that maybe I should have drawn my pages at like larger than 72 DPI or consistent sizes. I don't know. It can help you keep your options open in the future if you just kind of I guess.
There's also the fact that you can't always predict where it's going to go, where the net's going to go. Like one of my influential web comics is Hero, which is built for the web. If you go onto it on browser, you can hover over each panel and it'll have the dialogue in it, which is really nice, but it doesn't work on mobile.
No. Oh, yeah, no, it wouldn't, eh?
So it's like, it's so cool though.
What are your inspirations?
That's really interesting.
Yeah. Tell us why. Your inspirations.
Oh, my inspirations? I mean, I take a lot from Clamp for manga, and also Final Fantasy and Breath of Fire 3 and 4 specifically. Huh?
Heck yeah.
And I also take inspiration from a lot of novels, actually. Like probably for Empyrean and such, I'm very much influenced by The Deathgate Cycle by Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman, which you could probably see if you knew about it. But and also books like The Volstovic Cycle by Jada Jones and Danny Bennett, and just stuff like that. So not just necessarily comics and video games. And for webcomics, I pretty much have most people wouldn't recognize them because they either don't exist anymore or have fallen into obscurity. Like Hero was definitely one of them, which I highly recommend. Still finding that. I believe it's invisiblecities.comicgenesis.com. And then there was one called Red Strings of Fate, not to be confused with Red String of Fate, which is apparently a more popular comic, but that one does not exist anymore. Then there was God, I'm trying to think.
Did you ever read Salad Days?
Salad Days.
Yeah. Oh boy, this conversation is really driving home the impermanence of the medium, because I think most of the comics I started reading at the very beginning are either no longer updating or outright just not available anymore.
And there was one called Mixed Myth, which I think is actually finished and still exists. Which pretty much, I think that was the one that I found that made me realize, oh hey, there's more than just gag video game comics on the internet.
Yeah, just VG cats.
I guess that's like also the assumption on a lot of parts, right? As when in the early days there wasn't a lot of comics that were like
long form.
Long form, full narrative.
You're making a webcomic, so like Penny Arcade?
Yeah.
It was a lot of like mirroring what was going on the syndication side for I think early webcomics seemed to be more so leaning towards the direction of like what you saw on the funny pages or like that, but like skewing to a more adult audience, or in an environment where you don't have to worry about syndication or what the New York Times or Boston Globe thinks about your work. You can just make a strip and make it whatever you want. So I think like a lot of early webcomics seem to have that energy.
Well, it's not just that, though, but it's also easier to share, so it's easier to get word of mouth from just a single page.
Yeah.
You didn't have to buy the newspaper to get to read it.
Yeah.
When I was first getting started and hanging out on the webcomic list forums, like most of the other users that were there were making some sort of gag-a-day like comic strips. And I remember it took a while for it to fully sink in, but it was mostly when people were talking about promotional strategies, and I was like, none of these seem like they would work very well for my comic, because posting a single page to like Facebook or like putting it on Reddit or something is something that like if one page of your comic is just a single self-contained joke, you can drop that anywhere on the internet and people will be able to react to it and be like, ha, that's funny, and like get a complete sense of enjoyment out of it. But if you drop a random page from like 1,000-page fantasy epic story anywhere on the internet out of context, people are just going to be like, art's pretty, and that's it. So
early promo was definitely harder. I mean, it's a little bit easier now, I feel, because like just the habit of a lot of artists like redrawing popular memes as their characters. If you do it well, you could at least get a shorthand of the character's personality.
I know Lacey does that really well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Lacey, creator of Lies Within.
Yes.
Probably also linked. Good comic.
Oh my god. But I guess like the good thing about knowing of your inspirations is to also help reach those audiences that you want to get. Because, you know, if you are somebody who creates a comic that was heavily inspired by XYZ, like, I would definitely be using those as your strengths and being like, okay, so when I was into this content, like, who else was into this content and how did I reach them with the stuff that I'm creating that is also in that similar kind of vein of adventure and stuff like that. And I think it's just really imperative to kind of keep that in your back pocket and understand the limits that you can do with the content that you create too. Because I know, like, for me and Space with Ghost Slap, our inspirations are like Full Metal Alchemist, Cowboy Bebop, Trigun in the manga, and things like that, Final Fantasy VII, that deal with like darker tones and stuff. And I was like, okay, I was consuming that as a child at X and I could understand the themes. So like, you know, I'm going to help with that gauging an audience and then, so on and so forth, and know how to market it. It really, really comes in handy when you kind of think of it like that.
Yeah.
As well as like coming up with a blurb of what it's about and stuff.
Blurbs are hard. But once you do that, it's just like, oh gosh, I can kind of figure out who I'm going to send this to, or at least try and put in front of. So
Yeah.
yay.
Yeah, exactly that. And it's kind of like something that can also help, like, that kind of backup when you say your log line of your comic to people at a convention, because I don't think that it's good practice telling people at a convention to start with the similarities first. Like, I always think of that one story where this guy was telling people of his story, and the first thing that he says, it's like Star Wars and Futurama, but this. I don't remember the story of his comic. I don't even remember the name. The only thing I remember is Star Wars and Futurama. He didn't say his title at all in that. He didn't even say the characters. And like that, you say that after. You say, okay, blah blah blah, this comic is about that, and then if you get that person kind of interested, then that's like, if you like this, blah 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 blah. I would use that as a backup. I wouldn't go ahead with that.
Yeah.
I think that's useful if you're like selling something in person, maybe, like, because you're assuming they're going to buy the book, they'll take it with them, they'll form their own relationship with the book once you get it in their hands. But the first thing you got to do is get it in their freaking hands. So
exactly that. I think it's really imperative that you said that's in a relationship too. I like that.
Like, I feel like that way of pitching it, where it's like, this plus this and this, like, it's really good for like the pitching, not competitions, but like the pitching days on Twitter, like I guess DB Pit, where it's just like, it's Futurama plus Willy Wonka plus gay. Like that sounds horrifying now that I say that.
I'd still read it.
Somebody make that, please.
they made the spaceship out of chocolate.
Yeah.
Down for that.
Honestly, though, figuring out what the like core appeal of your comic is so important, and also one of the hardest things to kind of do, depending on your creation process. Like, if you just kind of go at it with like, I've got some characters that I think could be fun, I'm going to come up with a plot line to go around them. I know some folks who start very mechanically, like kind of with the pitch overview, like the elevator pitch ready to go. And I don't necessarily do that, but I almost wish I did, because I feel like it would save me a lot of time later. Like, I feel like I never know what people are reading my comic for until I'm already like 700 pages deep.
That was kind of my case.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
But yeah, knowing that, like figuring out what things people are coming to your work for, definitely helps with finding readers in a major way. Like just figuring out the best way to talk about it. Like, and this can take a lot of trial and error, like putting a lot of things out into the void on Twitter or whatever, and seeing what people respond the best to. But ultimately, it's useful.
Yeah.
Also something where I think if you've got a friend that also makes comics, or honestly anything, like I know one of the things that got me into writing a pitch or even just a log line for Phantom Marine was my friend Jade, who she makes a webcomic as well called Encephalon. It's really cool. You should go check it out. I will send a link. But she was just like, we sat down at lunch and she's like, okay, Clara, you need to figure out how you're going to tell people about this comic, because she was like my only reader like 4 years ago when I wasn't sharing it with anybody.
Aww.
And I was just, but I had reasons for that, because I was just like, I don't really know what I'm making, so I can't really market it just yet. But she was just like, you got to market this. How are you going to do it? And I'm just like, I don't know. I'm making a comic that I like. And she's like, no, write down the things that you're adding to this comic that you like, that other people might like, what makes it different, what makes it unique.
Yes.
Like, just vomit ideas out. And then see if there's something there where it's just like, okay, I can kind of sell it on this. People like this. I could do this. Like, you kind of start doing that that like conspiracy wall where this leads to this with this red string, and then you're just like, oh, okay, I think I know how to sell this in like 2 sentences. So it's sometimes it just takes sitting down and just being like, oh, okay, I got to think about this, but that can be hard too.
Yeah. And I think it's just all part of the process to understand how to get, like, even understanding your work too, because like I feel like I know several creators who just do the thing, and then I'm just like, I don't know if you know what's going on, kind of thing, where it's kind of lost, and it doesn't make sense to anybody reading it because the point is still not there. So it's really good to just kind of reflect and be like, okay, so who would read the comic? Not specifically who is reading the comic, but who would read the comic? Are you creating a comic that you would read, and why are you reading it if that's the case? And then, kind of going from there.
Yeah. Marketing is tough.
Wait for a
We should do an episode on it.
We should.
We will. It's on the list.
Yeah.
Eventually.
But yeah, I think also we get in our heads so much. And I mean, that's not always a bad thing. You don't have to make a marketable webcomic. You can make a comic just for yourself. You could be just like having the time of your life. Maybe it's the way you de-stress or whatever. But yeah, it doesn't always translate to something that other people know or understand. So whatever you can do to help them understand, like, this is what I'm doing. If you're into that kind of thing, maybe you'll like it too. I don't know.
Exactly that. Absolutely exactly that. I think like if you're at that point where you're constantly questioning where your readers are or who's reading that comic, that's when you should be reflecting on that mostly. And if you're someone who's going to be selling it at a convention, like obviously you need like a little bit of a elevator pitch, like Thane said, to kind of read to people and whatnot so they can actually get that book in their hands. But if this is something like Delphi said, that's kind of more personal and something not necessarily for other people, like then go crazy.
Yeah.
I also think there's just a lot of culture right now where like very young kids, like younger than I would ever consider, like are trying to think of how do I make my comic marketable. I'm like, I would have not wanted my Legend of Zelda fan comic to be marketable. It wasn't. No, just let me be a kid. Let me enjoy what I'm enjoying. Just that's completely valid.
Yeah, I 100% agree on that.
Yep.
Boy, I could not imagine if my first webcomic had actually taken off and become like widely read. I'd never be able to escape from it now.
Oh no. Oh, mine was reasonably popular. I'm just glad it's faded into obscurity. No
Sometimes
one
it's
knows.
like that. Well,
Let
we
Graham
are
go.
running a little bit out of time. So I guess it'd probably be a good time to go down at the list and where can everyone find your comics?
Delphi first.
Oh gosh. Well, I've been Delphina, and you can find my comic Zombulus at zombulus.com.
And I've been Crispy. Absolutely, always. And you can find my work at ghostjunksickness.com.
And I'm Miranda, and you can find Into the Swell at intotheswellcomic.com.
I'm Claire, and you can find Phantomarine at phantomarine.com.
I'm Finn, and you can find Heirs of the Veil at heirsoftheveil.fervorcraft.de.
And I'm Ray, and you can find Overlord of Ravenfell on Dilly Hub and Webtoon, and you can find on Empyrean High at empyreancomic.com.
And I'm Rennie, and you can find my work at kateblast.com.
I'm Verathane, and you can find my webcomics at charalt.sevensmith.net and also at witchwoodcomic.com.
And
my
you can
God.
follow ScreenTones at on Twitter at ScreenTonesCast, we are going to, one of the things we are going to be adding in the new year is we're going to be adding a few new podcasting platforms in which you can find the podcast on. Right now it's just Spotify and Apple, but as soon as more platforms like Google or some other third-party apps are added, watch for the Twitter account and we'll have those posted. And we also have the a side blog where where a few people from here go into a lot more detail on some of the topics. What is the link for that?
I think it's webconicresources.tumblr.com.
So yeah, check that out if you want a lot more information about certain topics. And if you have any suggestions for topics that you want us to discuss, feel free to add us on Twitter, because we would absolutely love more ideas. Because we will talk about anything.
We will.
True.
I'm a rambler.
Yes.
I'll do it.
Absolutely. That sounds like it's a chicken salad Caesar wrap.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
So
Why do you like? There's too many food references. I'm getting hungry. Like those cookies look so good.
that tiara is just destroying. Let's take a moment. Let's take the final minute to appreciate this drawing.
Well, I just
my
like this.
goodness.
I like that there was a story because I totally would have thought the cookies would have been majorly burnt, but it looks like they turned out just fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
We got a question that I think we might. I don't know if we should answer this real quick in the chat. And the question is if people can recommend guests for the podcast.
Oh, I mean, honestly, I'd be interested regardless of who you suggest and stuff like that. We're still kind of like, what's the word? Ironing it out with everything before we decide to get guests on here. But I mean, regardless, we could always look into who you're interested in as well.
The suggestions are welcome. Whether we act on them soon depends on like technical stuff, scheduling, and we wouldn't want to invite like a really cool guest on board and then spend like half an hour troubleshooting like weird quirks in the software or something. So want to make sure we're ready.
A bunch of goobers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thanks for getting that link, Pongles. I
Thank
was
you, Pongles,
waiting to
so
say,
much.
but you get
Wow.
all. We have all of our. Pongles has been awesome with the links in chat. But screentones.tumblr.com/about has all of our bios and links and everything about us. Woo! So you can go there, and then beacons.ai/screentonescast for all of the links in one handy dandy place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So handy.
Thank you, Pongles.
Yeah,
Well, thank you
Pongles.
everybody for tuning in. This is really fun, and I hope everyone has a very safe and healthy and happy holidays.
Yeah, happy holidays,
Happy
everyone.
holidays.
Happy
Happy
holidays.
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 I'm hungry.